Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the latest letter from the producer live, number 71, and this is our first preview of patch 6.2. Now, being it's a part 1 preview, it is not too long, there's not too many deep details, but we did get a lot of information packed into a neat 2-hour live letter. So we're going to go over all of that. In case you're wondering about the translations, these are unofficial translations that have been provided by the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit's Discord. So we'd like to have special thanks to Miyuna, who's typing out everything, and I believe it is, let me double check before I say it, it is Aluna Minori doing the actual post. They're also doing some of the translations, but they work together to do image posts and translations here. They do it every live letter, and we very much appreciate them for it. So, with that, they said, as mentioned earlier, due to Discord limitations, not able to publish every message to the servers that are subscribed to this channel. If you want to follow the translations live, please join this server. I've joined the server, so I have all the messages, and you'll get to see them. You're free to use translations for your content creation. Please credit us if you do. I hope people aren't not doing that. We've been making sure to do it every time, and I hope you appreciate their work. And it's unofficial, so take certain things with a grain of salt. So they first started by talking about patch 6.18, which is coming this coming Tuesday, including a 24-hour maintenance. So that's going to have data center travel, which they've talked about a ton, and we're not going to talk about here. They of course mentioned the addition of Meteor to the Japanese data center and world redistribution, and the new worlds that are being added to the European data centers. Now, as a reminder, North America is also supposed to be getting some restructures. They've gone over this before, and we'll dive into those details again as they make posts about it on the Lodestone. They're also replacing the server equipment in Europe to try and help with the load. This is, again, them trying to future-proof situations like the expansion that we just had, where there were super long login times, queues. They're just trying to future-proof this for 7.0. So that's what the goal is with all this. Now, they haven't said Savage will be unlocked in 6.18. By the way, there's a new message. But we can assume that it will be. It has, for the past expansion or so, been unlocked in 0.18. I don't think they'll go back to doing a 0.2/0.4 unlock. So we're pretty safe to assume that, even though they didn't say it. However, Season 2 of Crystalline Conflict will start after the maintenance on July 5th. And as a reminder, whatever your rank was in Season 1, you will be downranked 5 risers, meaning if you ended in Crystal, you would go back down to Diamond 5, and you can do the rest of the math for whatever rank you are in currently. Now, if you, of course, don't play for a season, you would continue to go down 5 until you're all the way back down at the bottom, but if you keep up your PvPing every single season, you'll get to keep a general rank that you can expect. So, please bear that in mind. Also, this is not the end of the series. They really need to rename these things, as I knew this was going to be a problem. The series, the Malmstone Pass, ends in 6.2 and will be replaced by another one. That is not ending on Tuesday. You still have until 6.2, which is probably about 2 months away at this point. And also, when the series itself ends, you'll actually have a whole patch to buy those rewards with trophy crystals. So even if you don't finish it by 6.2, you're not locked out of the Arc Fiend set. So they really need to adjust that. Please. I hate having to explain that as often as I do. Now, the next patch will be called Buried Memory, and it will be coming late August 2022. My personal prediction would be August 23rd. That is in line with adding 2 weeks to their normal schedule, which is exactly what they said would be happening going forward. It could also be August 30th, but one of those two is going to be true. We'll just have to wait to find out. We'll know for certain when the Moogle Tombstone event comes around. That's normally exactly 4 weeks before the patch. So keep an eye out for that. That's a good way to get some predictions done. Now, of course, there will be new main scenario quests, but they're not going to tell us much. They're not going to show us much. We do get a couple of images. We can see a mini Atomos here next to Ishtola, probably as a means of trying to travel not only to the Void, but I'm sure she's going to be trying to use that to also travel to the First. We're going to be extrapolating Atomos, it looks like, as a major point. Now, Sid is also here, and that's not too surprising. People have been waiting for him to return, especially because we know of his involvement with the Void in the Crystal Tower series. So we can also probably expect Nero to be making an appearance. My full expectations are in that. We also have Xenos' Void Sent avatar from when he was a Reaper, made a brief appearance in patch 6.1, and is likely going to be centered to some story. We don't know how much of Xenos is really involved in this thing versus what this thing actually is. For all we know, he could be as dead as we think he is, and this is the Void Sent just returning to the Void, and that's all there is to it. We don't know. Okay, that's it. Then we have new side quests. We have Tataru's Grand Endeavor, and it looks like she's gonna be employing the Sky Pirates of the Void Arc series in order to expand her mercantile operations. You will need the Shadow of Mox storyline complete in order to do the next Tataru Grand Endeavors. So, if you have not done Void Arc, Weeping City, and Dunskaith, if you wish to continue Tataru's questline, you will have to get that done. It's a swell quest series. It's okay. It's original. It's not based off anything in particular and has some high points and low points. I'm glad to see that they're trying to include it in something going forward. Now we get to some interesting things to discuss. Somehow further Hildebrand adventures will be returning. These will be continuing throughout the rest of the expansion in every, it seems like, .x5 patch. Now, I really enjoyed the first quest. It was a prime return to form for those of us who enjoy Hildebrand quests. And so having something in .2, 5.3, 5.4, 5, and 5.5, what I wanted. Great. This reminds me of A Realm Reborn, which is when Hildebrand was really at its peak, even if it's had moments in Heaven's Ward and Stormblood. Now, that being said, this next point is a little concerning for some, and we need to talk about it. New weapon enhancement quests. So that's keyword for what the community calls relics. We have the Zodiac weapons, the Anima weapons, the Resistance weapons, and the Eureka weapons. I didn't say them in order, but that's what we have. We now know what the next ones are going to be called. The Manderville weapons. Yeah, it's tied to Hildebrand. Which means, yes, you need to do the A Realm Reborn Hildebrand quests, the Heavensward Hildebrand quests, the Stormblood Hildebrand's quests, and of course, the Endwalker Hildebrand quests in order to be all caught up. Now, I will say this. There are 4 trials combined in that. 3 of them you could unsync very easily. I say easily. I think one of them's actually a little annoying. And the 4th one you could unsync with like 2 or 3 people. And that's the one from Stormblood. If you do not enjoy Hildebrand's quest series, and this is upsetting to you, just know that they are incredibly short if you do not watch the cutscenes. Some patches were as little as 30 minutes with the cutscenes, which means it's literally 2.5 minutes to skip all of the quests. This isn't going to be that bad if you need to get caught up on it, but I know some people won't be a big fan. I like Hildebrand. I like when they tie old content into new stuff to encourage people to go back and do it if they haven't already, but I know that won't be popular with everybody. That's just a fact. Some people didn't even like that we had to do Return to Evilise for the Resistance questline, and I also really like that series. So, unlocked and somehow further Hildebrand adventures, the legendary Manderville weapons. Now, it says quest-centric progression. Don't take that too seriously. All of our relics have been quest-centric. They always have a quest that asks you to bring 10 of this item or 15 of this item, and the story advances like this, and the story advances like that. It doesn't really mean anything. What it might mean is, I don't think it means anything at all. Well, wait, maybe they do mean something specific with that, but they were not any more clear with it. So I don't think it means anything at all. And it'll gradually update throughout 6.x. Now, of course, Geralt is here, but we know another very skilled craftsman in the Manderville series by one named Godbert. And by Yoshida's own words, what happens when the world's best blacksmith and the world's best goldsmith come together? Probably some pretty dope weapons, one might assume. So maybe Geralt will finally have his debt repaid, or he's now also going to be permanently indebted to Godbert, and he's literally double as screwed because now he owes Godbert and Rowena. I think he's more screwed. I don't think there's a situation where he doesn't come out more screwed than before. I don't think it happens. But we'll see. We'll see what actually ends up happening. I'm sure Rowena's going to get involved again somehow. She always does. So you have until 6.25 to do this. Realistically, if 6.2 is late August, you probably have until October to get any of this stuff done. And again, it's very quick. You can knock it out in a day and no problem at all. Again, the only concern is potentially the Stormblood trial, which with a couple of people, you could unsync it pretty quick. And with this news, that queue might actually be popping for that pretty quick, but we'll see. Now, new tribal quest. Now, I've had a lot of discussions about this recently. In Shadowbringers, we made our predictions on who would be the tribal quests based on the tribes they had taken the time to show us in the live letters and the fan fests. We ended up being wrong about that on one case. The Kitari were never mentioned, and the New Mo, which were mentioned, never got a tribal quest. So we've had to throw that expectation out the window and just guess based on almost common sense, things that we think in our headcanon make the most sense. And it looks like part of that has come true. They've never mentioned the Omicrons officially in the promotional material for the original release of Endwalker, none of the fan fests or anything like that. We only saw them. We didn't know what they were called until we got to Ultima Thule. And it seems the Omicrons are going to be our gathering tribal quests coming in 6.25. And as anyone could have predicted, the main reason people predicted the Omicrons as crafting or gathering was for the bar at the end of the world. And sure enough, our predictions for that were correct. Whether it was gathering or crafting, this was the reason Omicrons were on most people's prediction list. And that's it. It's a weird thing to do, but I'll take it because it means more Omicron lore, and it probably means some good old fun times. I am curious about one thing, though. The end of Endwalker is supposed to be a very solitary kind of experience. Are they going to instance it so that they don't see a wall of people or at these NPCs while they're trying to do the end of the game quests that are in that section? We'll see. We'll see. That, I mean, it's not a major thing, but it could be a little weird to get there and all of a sudden you're trying to do the little quests before the long walk, and you're just like, what are all these people doing here? So, curious to see how that's actually going to work out. They do actually acknowledge that a lot of people thought it was the Loporrits. It was going to be the Loporrits next. I think the Loporrits are going to be crafting. I do think they're going to be the last one. So, I'm holding my predictions for that. We got to teach them how to make stuff that isn't carrots or robes. They were atrocious in the MSQ. So, we got to help them out with that. Lead by example, as far as I'm concerned. So, then the new dungeon, the Fell Court of Troya. This is part of the MSQ, and it is gorgeous. So this is a Final Fantasy IV reference for those of you who do not know. And we were told they were going to be cranking up the Final Fantasy IV references throughout the rest of Endwalker. And that is no surprise. So that is the wide view of the dungeon, a wonderful aesthetic as far as I'm concerned. And by Yoshi P's own admission, this is the break room for GMs. Before they go out to dole out punishment to those harassers and cheaters. Well, I guess maybe not the cheaters. How long it took to happen with PvP. Never mind. This is where they hang out beforehand. So, looks really, really good. And I'm curious to see more of the Final Fantasy IV references in the future. Now, it says this is where the GMs live. Now, there is a new trial, and they said they actually won't be telling us what the new trial is at all before the patch. They said it will be a secret up to release, which all but confirms to me that it's the Four Fiends. I don't know why they would be hesitant to tell us this in advance. I feel like they shouldn't be, but it's almost certainly the Four Fiends, the four Archfiends from Final Fantasy IV. That would be Scarmiglione, Cagnazzo, Barbarisha, and of course, Rubicante. Now, there is the one question. Normally, our 0.3 trial, the past several expansions, has been an MSQ trial, and thus we normally have an instance for one of these bosses, or they get thrown into a dungeon, like was with Genbu. We don't know how they're going to handle this. Those rules don't matter. A Realm Reborn didn't have a special 0.3 trial that was like more important to the MSQ. It was Ramuh. Theoretically, that could happen again here in Endwalker, where all four of the fiends are bosses. Now, of course, people want Golbez in the MSQ. They want Zeramis in the MSQ. So there's always that possibility that it isn't the Four Fiends. There's also the possibility that even if the Four Fiends are part of this series, that Golbez could be part of something else, and this could be a prerequisite that's required. There's a lot of things. There's also, of course, the rematch against all four of the Archfiends from Final Fantasy IV, which, you know, yeah, you could say ultimate at some point, but that's part of the story. That's something that is canonical and iconic, I'd even say, to Final Fantasy IV. So, big question marks on this, quite literally, I suppose. Oh, he also said the question marks are not indicative of the name of the instance. It's just 8 question marks because they could. I think it'll be the 4 Fiends. I'm still holding true to that. So, that's where we're at. Then we get Pandemonium, Abyssos. We already knew this. If you've done the story for Asphodelos, then Abyssos wasn't a surprise. Abyssos and Abyssos Savage. This will be releasing sort of at the same time as 6.2. Many of you may know that for a long time, I have been an advocate of adding a delay between normal and savage for every single patch. For those of you who are newer, we get a delay in the 0.0 patches, 4.0, 5.0, 6.0. It's a 2-week delay for normal, another 2-week delay for savage. Makes sense because they want people to do the MSQ and not be able to jump into normal as soon as they get to max level. Here, normal will be out the same day as 6.2, but savage will be delayed 1 week. I am a huge fan of this idea for a good number of reasons. Reason number 1, when people are taking off of work, hardcore raiders, this is a super small percentage of people, but it's still a percentage. Having another week to give notice is a very major thing. It is a constant struggle to be able to predict patch cycles to make sure that time off is something that is good. Now, 2 weeks would have been better for that, but 1 week is still something. I think that that's probably a bit better than doing the 2 weeks, but still. It means a week to do normal mode, watch the story, analyze the fights, to get any items done, to try out the new MSQ, to do any of the new side quests that are already available, try out any job changes a week, maybe do some PvP and chill. It's just a chance to play the patch before the Savage instead of playing Savage before the patch. And as somebody who does everything, that for me is the preferred outcome. Now, they did say that this is not a permanent change. This is a trial run. They are going to be looking at the feedback for it to determine if it is something they will do in the future. Now, there is another reason why I wanted these separated, one that hasn't come up in quite some time, but the day of patch releasing, an element that goes into Savage rating is how quick can you log into the game, how quick can you get through normal, and then how quick can you get through Savage. All of those elements become a factor. And if you have somebody who, if the login servers are screwed and like not all of your members can get in, or you have like a duty instance in the normal mode that's either breaking or is causing queue times in the instance server, there's so many little things that go awry on these 0.2 and 0.4 patches. We have seen it so many times before. By separating the Savage from that same day login for the major patch, you ensure that that issue is mitigated pretty much entirely. And it is a great equalizer amongst everyone competing. Now, I will say, they mentioned there's going to be new crafted gear, there's going to be new tomes, of course, and the big question is also, will those be delayed? They didn't say they would, which would mean there's a week of tomes and a week to get crafted gear as well. Now, that's going to hurt the crafting market, who make a great profit off of day one raiders. They basically commission them to solely work on their crafted set before they go do anything else for the patch. That is going to hurt them more than anybody, because if there is, now that's assuming they didn't say that crafted gear would be delayed. If it is not delayed, that will happen. That will be the cause. That's about the only downside that I see, personally. I'll be spending that week breaking it down. I'll be spending that week on content, on PvP, on the new Extreme Trial, on the new Unreal that'll be out. And I don't know. I'm just an everyone. I'm an every content guy. That's it. I'm just an every content guy. So this is the preferred outcome. I hope this isn't the only time it happens. I have a pretty strong feeling the response to this will be more positive than negative. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, new Unreal Trial will be, oh, and a quick picture of Abyssos. Those look like spider webs. I feel like if they do a spider, they'll do more like an Arachne spider and not like a Dark Souls or Demon Souls spider. I think they're going to be well aware of arachnophobia, so they'll probably go with something that looks less spidery. I feel confident that the dev team, because look at the spiders we have in the game now. None of them, I mean, some of them definitely do it to some people with very, very severe cases of arachnophobia, but they try to be not super creepy and realistic, like you see in a lot of more mainstream games that feature spiders. You know, they get away from them looking exactly like that. So, regardless, moving on, the new Unreal trial, they said that Sephiroth was originally planned for 6.1, but they did Ultima instead. No surprise, Sephiroth's in 6.2. Now, they actually said they made quite a few adjustments to this encounter by making... So, in case you didn't know, old fights where you used to be able to fall off and permadie, that hasn't been the case for a little while. Sephiroth was already changed for that, so there will be no permanent defeat if you fall off the arena in Sephiroth. That's going to make it a little easier. But they also made adjustments to things like proximity AoEs on the Earthshakers. So, the Earthshakers in Sephiroth were actually proximity damage, but there was no indicator of that. So instead of changing the icon, they actually just made them function like normal Earthshakers. They just need to be faced away from everybody else. They also said that they fixed a bit of the tank damage on the ads to make it more in line with what Unreal difficulty is going to be normally. This seems to be the most adjusted Unreal encounter. They've largely kept the Unreals faithful to the originals, so we've been able to cheese them with a lot of our newer skills in their older design. But this one, they're going out of their way to make it not an overwhelming encounter for some. And I agree, if they had left it unchanged, this would have had the lowest clear rate of any Unreal. Not that Unreals have high clear rates anyway, because honestly, I don't think a lot of people do them. But compared to Ultima, it would have been a massacre. I still think it's going to be a massacre, but I will see. I could be really disappointed with this because I love the original Sephiroth fight. So I hope a lot of the changes are towards the more ambiguous, like changing. I really hope they change the icons for the debuffs in the second phase. I can't tell the difference between them. As someone who's colorblind, I really can't. So I hope the icons are a little different. I hope there's some better visualization there. And of course, with the changes to the knockoff and these other things they're mentioning, it'll be the most changed Unreal that we have at this point, but may not be as insurmountable as you may have been hearing up to this point. But I'm really glad to see that Sephiroth is the choice. Now, for PVE and PVP adjustments, they didn't go into detail, but they actually made a comment on something they spoke about in a previous live letter and some previous interviews. They made mention that Dragoon and Astro were two jobs they really needed to look at as jobs that needed job changes. Now, for Dragoon, it was because they felt the job basically hit a brick wall in terms of its design. It can't go anywhere. They've basically just been adding the bare minimum to it every expansion because it kind of was perfect in a sense already. So they said they would probably be reworking it so that it could so that they could build on it again, similar to what they've done to other jobs. Of course, the most recent example being Summoner for some, and that's very scary to some people to think about. Astro, on the other hand, has all sorts of issues. Great performing job, don't get me wrong. But the minor arcana changes, the button bloat, it's been a constant battle. I think Astro is probably the smart one to look at and make some adjustments to. And the Dragoon is probably going to be the one that's more contested on whether or not those changes turn out good. Now, I think for Dragoon, they might want to keep the Combo Master thing going. It might be just about the rest of the OGCD button bloat that they have. Because Dragoon is a lot of OGCD button bloat. I'm curious. I know some people also want the 11 Wyvern to make its appearance. Listen, if it was going to happen, it's going to happen then. But the big thing is that got postponed. That was originally going to be maybe 6.2. They had said in the past they would try for 6.2, but that they weren't going to commit to that release date. And they said that, and I quote, hold on, let me get it. It was too much that was needed. Oh boy, if you thought it was going to be a subtle Dragoon rework, that statement instantly sends your brain in the other direction. Now, whether it's 6.3 or they save it for the expansion is very telling. I think 6.3 because of this next statement. Aside from the patch notes, we will give further detail on why and how we decided on future job adjustments. This will be in written form, so I will not be forgetting things to mention. In other words, this won't be taking up time in a live letter. We won't have to rely on unofficial translations for this. This will be an official statement that happens around patch note time, or in addition to the patch notes. And this will not just be about Dragoon or Astro, but it's another one of those like developer blog almost posts where they break down the QA process and the whiteboard process and all of those things. So it's going to be very technical in its terminology and may not even affect whether or not you care about the job changes or if you like them or not. It's just going to be very technical back-end explanation. We'll see how those turn out, though. We don't know if they'll be good or bad until we play them. I think people are just nervous about change, and understandable, given what happened to Summoner. I may like it, for the most part, but I know a lot of people don't. So we'll see. Patch 6.2, they're also going to be making changes to critical hit rate and direct hit rate. Now, this is specifically targeting issues in party composition, where there are jobs that have auto crits and auto direct hits, and they kind of don't benefit from job adjustment or from job buffs pretty much at all. So like, let's say you have a warrior in your party. They have auto crits, they have auto direct hits. Okay, bard buff is useless for them. The crit buff from the song or direct hit from battle voice. A scholar suddenly is useless to them. Battle litany is suddenly useless to them. So they're trying to get that situation and resolve it, so that it's no longer this massive differential between being an auto crit direct hit job and not gaining these buffs. Now, there's a couple of ways they can do this. With crit, I say easiest, the most direct thing they could do is make crit rate buffs affect your character sheet. What happens is that the crit rate buffs or debuffs don't affect the value on your character sheet, so they only affect how frequently you actually land crits. They don't affect your critical hit damage. So by adjusting the character sheet, that circumvents that problem. It would actually be able to affect your critical hit damage as well. Direct hit doesn't have that. Direct hit only ever has rate. So they might have to rework direct hit to work a little more like crit, or they might have to take away the 100% and add some potency to make up for the fact. I have a feeling they're just going to be tackling the stats though and not the individual skills. So that's something they're going to talk about in the next letter from the producer live. And it's something that is a much needed change in order to fix some of the party composition desyncing issues that we've had, especially in the last two expansions. Also, new rewards for PvP. Season 3 will be starting in 6.2. So we have Season 2 in 6.18, Season 3 in 6.2, and Series 2 will begin in 6.2. They gotta change the name. I said it once this video already. They gotta change the name, please. So the Momstone thing, new Momstones in 6.2, end of August. Rival Wings will also be returning in 6.2. They also did mention in a previous interview and live letter, or I think in an interview specifically, that they were going to be making frontline specific adjustments in PvP, which they would detail at a later date. So that way, even when something is like OP or ridiculous in frontlines, it's not OP in Crystalline Conflict and vice versa, separating the balance between the two so that they're more even modes. Rival Wings would, of course, be the beneficiary of said changes as well, on top of whatever else they're actually doing to make the mode more succinct, whatever they did. We don't really know the scope of what they changed in Rival Wings at this point. Moving on, let's see. As far as this is as far as we get this time, these 5 dungeons. Oh, this is talking about continued improvement to main scenario quests. This is duty support for Snowcloak, Keeper of the Lake, Samal, Airy, and Vault. Those are all MSQ dungeons. Snowcloak and Keeper of the Lake, only 2 of Realm Reborn MSQ dungeons after 2.0, patch 2.4 and 2.5. And then they skip Dusk Vigil because it's not main scenario. And then you have Samal, Airy, and Vault. Now, the big concern was over the Airy with Estinian because he's also an NPC that's part of the final encounter. I think they did say they would make a change to that so that it wouldn't be negatively impacted. But as you can see, the crew is all here. Might be an Endwalker gear, but still has Isael, Alphino, and Estinian as their duty supports. Glad to see it. I was really hoping they were going to take the duty support time to, again, give us a better chance to connect with the characters and play with characters we've never been able to play with before as trust/duty support NPCs. And this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to see, and I'm glad to see they are fully committing to that. You know, big thumbs up from me. On top of that, let's see. A lot of our staff played the game before joining the team. They have a very good understanding of what changes additions would be enjoyed by the community. I mean, perfect example. Now, a couple of other changes. Steps of Faith, now a solo duty. So I hope you really like doing Dragonators and Cannons, because you're going to have to, most likely, in order to stop Vishat from reaching the end at this point. But no more people leaving Steps of Faith, even though it's arguably one of the easiest trial roulettes you could get if you're, it's so easy. You don't even have to use the cannons anymore. You just blast Vishap's HP because you do so much damage. On top of that, Thorn March is also going to be being revamped. Now, they did say that 8-man trials would be more slowly revamped for MSQ than they were initially. Now, Thorn March, when it first released in 2.1, was actually chaotic and a bit of a problem. It still occasionally causes problems now when people immediately try to kill the king. It's not so bad if you kill a couple of the Mughals, but you still run into a few issues. So they said they've completely revamped it from top to bottom. So wait for it in your roulette and see what it ends up being. Now, it doesn't say it's reducing it to 4 people. It still seems to imply it's an 8-person trial. So curious if they make a change to that somewhere down the line, or if it always remains to be 8-man. Now we get into some new battle content. This was so confusing. The emotion that we were going through as they started describing this next thing was so weird, because the way they started it, just everyone set their expectations for the rest of this. Okay, so new content, variant dungeons. Now, to be clear, this is not the deep dungeon. We are getting a new deep dungeon in 6.3x at some point. This is not that. Variant Dungeons is the name of a piece of content that is going to be for casual play. It'll have variable difficulty, so you can do it with anywhere from 1 to 4 people, and it was previously named Criterion Dungeon. We'll get back to that because it's very confusing. Level 90 casual play for 1 to 4 players. If you're using the Duty Finder, it'll be 4 players when you're auto-matched. There's no role restrictions. You can change jobs when you're inside. The enemy strength will be adjusted depending on the number of people you enter with, so don't worry if you want to do it alone, you can still do that. And it'll have multiple paths of progression. You'll be escorting an NPC through, and depending on the path that you take, the story actually changes. So if you want to do all the stories, you need to go through the dungeon multiple times. This is going to be the Sildine Subterrane, and it just says you'll be exploring the depths alongside a certain someone. I'm going to bet Nanimo or Pippin, personally, but we shall see. They even say chat says Ralbon. I wonder. Now, you're probably wondering, oh man, I thought we were going to get some hard 4-man content. We're not done describing variant dungeons, but just let me tell you right now, spoiler, you'll get your wish. So, the first one is the Sildine Subterrane. It'll be a different story for each path, but there's now also Criterion Dungeons, which is separate from the variant dungeons. So, Criterion Dungeon is the variant dungeon without the variant part. Basically, it's a set path through the dungeon that has a higher difficulty than the variant dungeon. The party compositions for these are fixed. They are 4-player parties, 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPS. The overall structure and enemy strength are entirely different. The route is predetermined, and there's no escorting an NPC through. So, on top of that, there's a Savage mode of the Criterion Dungeon. So it's a lot of layering on top of things, okay? So essentially, Variant Dungeon is normal mode, Criterion is extreme, and Criterion Savage is savage. That's the best way I could think to describe it. So it's very confusing. They should have just made 3 difficulties and had different rules for each of them, because it's very weird the way they're doing this. So the extreme dungeon, another paths as they're calling them, are high level as it is. They are meant to be difficult. They are meant to be challenging. They are not meant for casual play. But Savage is even harder on top of that. So how do they make it harder? Well, they already said enemy strength is more intense. They already said it's predetermined path, but what else can they do? Normal modes of resurrection are prohibited. That means, yes, Res Mage will not be rezzing in the Another Path Criterion Dungeon. However, every player is actually given the ability, a limited capacity of resurrecting their allies. So, regardless of your job, if you want to pick somebody up, you can, but only a limited number of times. Now, that's fine. So what's different about Savage? Oh, another thing real quick that isn't mentioned in this screenshot. Oh no, yeah, here we go. This is another picture for that. So also, if your entire party wipes, you will be sent back to the entrance in the another path normal mode, and all the enemies won't be revived. You can basically run back to where you were and continue trying to progress until you run out of time. Then you get into Savage. And Savage has a very different set of rules. So for normal mode, you can actually match up in the Duty Finder. You cannot do that for Savage. Savage has to be a pre-made party of 4. There's no matching available. There is no resurrections at all. No limited action, no skill. If you die, you're dead. So very much like Baldessian Arsenal, like DRS, and now we have the Criterion Dungeon. All enemies will be revived if your whole party KOs. So an advancement in DRS, if your party wiped, you had to exit the instance and come back in to start the whole thing over. In Savage Criterion Dungeons, you will be sent back to the beginning and everything will revive in front of you. So you don't need to constantly zone out and zone back in and zone out and zone back in. It makes it so that trying to get back to your progress point is a little more achievable, I suppose. Now, on top of that, if you do not clear the dungeon fast enough, all the enemies inside will enrage. So it's not just to talk about how skilled you are. It's a can you do the dungeon fast enough as well before everything gets enraged? And if you don't, well, you're going to have to go back to the beginning and figure out how to do it a little bit faster. Now, unfortunately, the one thing they don't talk about is the reward structure. I firmly believe if they're going to do this, this should be the same item level as your actual Savage gear, if not only 5 item levels under it. So we should have 630 gear from Abyssos, I think, and 635 weapons. This should be at the lowest, probably 625. They're both Savage. They both have much more intense completion. It really does depend on how Savage is, though. So I'm hoping they have an armor set or a weapon or something for this that doesn't de-incentivize doing Savage altogether, but is something that players can look forward to here. It could also be upgrade materials for Tombstone gear. There's a lot of rewards that would make sense in here, especially if you're trying to supplement people gearing multiple jobs. So I hope the reward structure from this is not as poor as DRS was. That is my chief concern. If it is amount upon 1 completion and these random like material drops that you get, I will say this, there is a chance normal mode gives gear and Savage upgrades the Criterion gear as well. I would also be okay with gear that is good outside of Criterion, but makes you stronger inside Criterion dungeons as well. So those are the things I hope to hear about it. I do not want another DRS structure, though, where you essentially feel no desire to ever do it again after you beat it once. It was not a good idea. Eureka did it better. So please. Now that was it for the first half of the live letter. They played Flow and Close in the Distance to make us cry, and then they came back afterwards to talk about Island Sanctuary. Now, Island Sanctuary, they didn't go too much into detail. We got a little bit of a peek about how this is going to work. They said they will actually do an in-game presentation of Island Sanctuary at the next live letter, which is likely to be in August. So every player gets their own island. And so build your own personal island, enjoy casual solo gameplay, gather materials, care for creatures, build facilities, craft items, and more. You do not need Disciple of Hand or Land leveled. And for some reason, to prevent spoilers, they decided to give us a censored image of the island. Now, in case you're wondering how big this island is behind all the censoring, the beach you can see, there's a little speck. There's a little speck right in the middle of the beach. You might think it's actually something on your monitor. That's a Rogadin. Right in the middle of the beach is a Rogadin. So, yeah, I have my mouse turned off. Oh, actually, maybe they have the image. Oh, here we go. There we go. So see that little dot right there? That's the player model. So that's it's not that small of an island at the very least. Yeah, no, that's dolphin shaped, guys. That's not something else shaped. That's dolphin shaped, definitely. And also, there is no gil requirement for purchasing the island. You will not need to spend millions of gil. It will be given to you for free. Of course, included in your sub fee would be the best way to put it. So don't worry about needing to save up a bunch of gil for actually unlocking the island. It won't be necessary. Now, on top of that, there's going to be different activities on the island. This is the big thing people want to know. What are you actually going to do there? So the things they're willing to give us details about so far. There are materials you can gather on the island itself as you're exploring it. They do not take up your main inventory space. They have a separate inventory space, completely separate. So it's all like tokens and, you know, it's probably like wood and sand and, you know, whatever. But they will not be taking up inventory space for the gathered materials. On top of that, you can use those materials to craft new items that let you harvest resources more efficiently. Now, you can also capture, you can grow crops and plant and cultivate seeds. These are not traditional gardening crops, though, which means you will not be able to grow things like Thebnarian onions. So that means the people who wanted this to be able to do that are upset, and the people who were worried about their Thebnarian onions dropping in price are rejoicing because they want to keep their Thebnarian onions all to themselves. Now, you can also collect and care for various creatures that you find on the island, and apparently they have rare coloring and unique critters. So you gotta get a shiny hunt. Oh, I'm a habitual shiny hunter in Pokemon. Now I gotta do it in Final Fantasy. Here we go. All right. Now, everyone's islands are all separated. That includes their resources, that includes their crafted materials, and that also includes their base of operations. There's a base of operations where you can customize the appearance and put down certain facilities that will allow you to unlock further tools for development. You can also have your minions walking freely around your base just to kind of spruce it and lively it up. And on top of that, you can earn rewards. Now, they don't tell us what any of the rewards are, but from the various activities that you will be doing, you can actually, you get a unique currency only for Island Sanctuary, so it's not gil. And you'll use that to buy whatever mounts, minions, your triple track, or whatever they decide to put in there. Now, on top of that, you'll be able to actually do trading with, you'll essentially be able to make handicrafts that get entered into this like trade route. And that, however you decide to do that, is going to be how you earn the currency. And that's not affected by other players. That is, again, something that is only explicit to the decisions you've made and what is going on your island in particular. So you don't have to worry about what other players are doing with that one. Now, eventually, in terms of exploring the island, you will have flying available once you've explored enough of the island. Mount speed increases will also be given to you once you've explored it. And you can go visit somebody else's island or invite people over to your island if you just want to socialize. People are asking if you can have NPCs come visit the island as well. And YoshiP says they'll collect feedback about that and see if they can incorporate it into future updates. I'm sure people are referring to Animal Crossing style NPCs, but I'm sure people would also be okay with, you know, Alice coming and checking out the island, or Ishtola, or the Thancred, or whoever. I'm sure that it's almost in any capacity people want it. So it's not like Minecraft. It's still like Final Fantasy XIV. The weather can also be different there, which isn't, you know, too much of a surprise. They even said they want you to be able to place an orchestrion at your base of operations and have it have distance-based audio, something Soken really likes doing whenever he can. So if when you walk further away from the orchestrion, the music gets lower. So it's something they're working on, but he didn't say it was definitive at this point. 6.2 adventure plates and portraits were up next. Again, they'll cover more Island Sanctuary in the next live letter. So adventure plates and portraits are coming out of beta. Honestly, I had forgotten they were technically in beta at the moment. And what they learned from the beta testing of patch 6.1 was that they needed to make some adjustments to the way that gear sets and your adventure portraits were linked together. Anyone who's changed job randomly or tried to change their portrait randomly has had their gear update when they don't want to in the picture, or their portrait completely breaks because they changed what job they were on, and so many little issues because they were trying to tie all the systems together as this image describes. So, you know, you have portrait 1, 2, 3, 4, set it to the adventure plate, set it to the portrait, set it to the gear set. They're just trying to intermingle too many things. So what they're going to do is they're going to separate all the systems together. So you'll have a portrait for gear set 1. You'll have a portrait for gear set 2. You'll have your adventure plate portrait. And these things will basically not change, or you can expect complete consistency once they've been linked to a gear set with your adventurer plate and your adventurer portrait. So this is taking out a large amount of the frustration with constantly swapping jobs in your portrait and your plate getting messed up. So this is, I'm glad they got that feedback from it pretty quick and actually made the adjustment in the coming patch as well. Glad to see them recognize that. They do go into a little bit more depth of explaining it, talking about what editing portraits will look like in here. But it's not really that much different. It's just the way the information is linked. The big thing is this being your portrait page now. Instead of showing you portrait 1, portrait 2, portrait 3, it shows you a list of your gear sets, and then you go into that gear set and edit the portrait like that, as opposed to the way it was done before. So cutting out a lot of middle steps and also making it far more clear about what you are going to do. My Twitch chat, as I'm recording this, said that these plates are not degen enough, and that is for good reason. Also, the portrait will now also display in Mahjong. This was something we expected if they were going to add it to anything else before maybe dungeons or whatnot, which they did say they want to work on at some point. They want portraits and plates or things like that to show up at the start of dungeons, but they haven't finished working on that aspect of it yet. But Mahjong was kind of an easy guess that they were going to do this with, so not really surprised by that. They'll have more to show of it in the future. But for now, that's what they've got. There's also going to be new poses, new animations, and all that kind of stuff as well. New decorations. So just expect it to continue evolving. It wasn't a one and done. They're going to keep evolving it and making sure you can unlock new stuff. Now, just a few minor things. Elegant Tomestones of Causality, those will be the next ones. The same rules that have always applied for Tomestones will be applied there. The currently capped ones will become the uncapped Tomestones. The uncapped Tomestones will be pushed out of existence, although you can temporarily convert them if you have any left over to I don't even know what our tomestones are called right now. After all the years, I just don't pay attention after the initial patch day. I just go capped tomestones, uncapped tomestones. But you'll be able to trade in the now pointless previous uncapped tomestones to the new uncapped tomestone. Aphorism and astrology. Yeah, I can't. There's too many names at this point. I've gone through too many tomestone names to keep up with it at this point. And then the new one will be capped at 450 a week. Causality will be capped at 450 a week as it's been in the past. New high item level crafted gear. And again, they don't mention a 1 week delay for these things alongside the Savage delay. So for now, we're assuming that these will be on patch day, despite Savage being delayed a week. Also, the big one, I've been talking about it for years now, ability to request repairs from other players, both in and outside of duties. This was a feature that was actually in patch 1.x, and we lost it going into A Realm Reborn, and so many times have I just wished I could repair somebody's gear in the middle of an instance, and we are getting it in patch 6.2. Thank goodness. I assume the requester is going to need dark matter. I hope it just needs either player to have dark matter so I could use my own if I need to. But I'm down to be repair daddy if it means I don't need to do phase 1 of P4S all over again because somebody forgot to repair. Oh guys, sorry, I forgot to repair. Can we exit real quick and do the first phase again? Oh no. Thank goodness for that. Time to save so many raid hours at this point. Oh man. Anyway, they're also changing the visual on the action screen. Now, this is an opt-in / opt-out style change, where essentially it shows you combo weapon skills and standalone weapon skills. It more breaks down what the flow of combat is for the various skills in your menu, if it's necessary for your job. However, if you prefer the old view you can toggle on in the bottom right. So you're not locked into this decision if it's not the one that you want. If you're really used to like where to find your skills in the original, go ahead. Yeah, no biggie. It's an option for people. Really, really big fan of that. Also, glam dresser capacity is being doubled. We knew that they were raising it. Apparently they had said they were doubling it to 800. I had forgotten they said they were doubling it. I just remembered that it was going up again. But glamour dresser capacity going from 400 to 800 in patch 6.2. So that's going to be good for a lot of people. And as Yoshi P says, I know you guys will be complaining again in 3 months that this is not enough. And then Foxconn jokes around and he's like, what if we made a feature where items just got deleted if you didn't use them after a certain period of time? And Yoshi is like, not a good idea. He's like, we don't even have a way of tracking that. We don't have like a system built in place to track when was the last time you used an individual item. So No. And that was pretty much it. They then showed, they then reminded people that Island Sanctuary would actually be patch 6.25. They also made mention that, you know, they're going to add some rare materials to ethereal reductions, and they were actually going to be making some adjustments to the Return to Evil East quest line, likely getting rid of the wine quest in the middle and maybe putting it at the end. But it says that the Making Bacon Bread and Walk on By quest will become unavailable. I wonder if it's because they're being restructured, so they're all part of like one bonus quest line at the end, or if they're just being deleted altogether. So curious how that actually ends up turning out. Then they showed us a quick video, the Primals concert that just aired last month. They are going to be releasing a Blu-ray for it for $60. It's going to have behind the scenes. It's going to have the entire concert itself, of course. And it's going to come with 2 item codes for Orchestrion rolls, specifically Close in the Distance Beyond the Shadow edition and Here Be Lions, the Beyond the Shadow edition. Also, the Immerse Game Pack is currently on sale, or will be on sale now through Monday, July 18th at 11:59 p.m. So, you know, July 19th at midnight, basically. That's 20% off at the moment, and there is a free trial for it as a reminder. There's also going to be a little TV show in Japan, 12 episodes long, called Looking for Party Members. We'll have free streaming available on smartphones and PC, and will be first airing on Saturday, July 9th. It's on the Yoshimoto channel. I don't know if there's an easy way for international people to access that channel or not, but if there is, then I'm sure some people will be checking it out. Eorzea Cafe opening in Kyoto, Nagoya, and Yokohama, and they're going to have some new items on the list. There's a Bayergot dessert right there, which is very, very interesting, based on the arena. And there's a couple other things here that are fairly interesting. Some of them are returning items, some of them are new items, but I hope they put the recipes online. I want to try making some of them. And then what is this? Recent important announcements as of July 1st. Oh yeah, these are just highlighting important lodestone posts that have been on the, lodestone. They also, talking about the packet loss thing, they said they've been communicating with individual ISPs to try and improve connections to them. It's never clear if they're talking about just Japanese ISPs or they're talking about worldwide ISPs whenever they have this discussion. But they always say that they do acknowledge that Western players are making a lot of these requests. So I'd have to imagine it's a worldwide thing that they're looking at, but they don't make it clear. So until they do, there's not really much you can say about that. Just rework Machinist. Just fix it up. I'm okay with it. I got 10 ping, but a lot of people aren't. So, yeah, so they're just saying, please look forward to 6.2, and then see you later. And then this is just at the end, Hiluna added this one last slide. This is the handicraft thing that I was actually looking for in the middle of that. Yeah, assemble collected materials, export your handicrafts, trying to align exports with market demand, sold for island-specific currency, and not affected by other players' actions. Okay. Anyway, that is going to be a wrap for live letter number 71. Pretty substantial. I'm really excited, of course, for the Criterion dungeons. I am actually excited for the relic weapons, of course, the Manderville weapons. I like Hildebrand, so for me, that is not a negative in any capacity. So I'm excited for August, and then, of course, probably more like September and October for some of the other features as they come in various patches. There's also other things that I'm sure people are wondering about that will no doubt be in 0.2. The ability to buy the 0.0 trial extreme mounts if you have 99 totems. So Extreme 1 and Extreme 2. Extreme 3 wouldn't be until patch 6.3, as well as a bunch of just the usual stuff. For anyone who's been playing for years, basically the usual stuff. Anyway, with that, I got a hair in my mouth that's really bugging me right now. I'm going to wrap up so I can take care of that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And maybe I'll make a few individual videos about some of these topics to break them down in more direct detail, so it's on shorter form content. But either way, hopefully you enjoyed. I got to get back to Monster Hunter, so be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.